Hi everyone, welcome. What I want to do tonight, is I want to start with something in connection to last week that I spoke about or didn't speak about that I feel like is necessary to bring up. So I want to start with that, and then I want to talk about some ideas from Birkot HaShachar. So we'll get to that in a minute. But I wanted to bring up a topic that actually after the class, my mother made a comment to me, hi Ma, and just made me thinking that it is a very important point that I wanted to bring up. So it's the idea of, well, I'll backtrack for a second. Last week we spoke about Hannah. I'm not going to retract the whole thing, but basically a lot of things we spoke about her had to do with the fact that she made herself very vulnerable. She got very connected. She wasn't only thinking about herself. She was thinking about the whole nation. She took the idea of a neder and tefillah and put them together. She did a lot of revolutionary things in her tefillah and connection to God, and which was great. And her tefillah was answered, and which was amazing, right? That's what you want to happen when we pray. We hope our tefillah are answered. But just because her tefillah was answered, thankfully, doesn't mean, sadly, that everyone's will be. And it's a topic that is a hard topic to talk about. I'm not going to dive too much into it. I want to just touch upon it for a minute, but it's a reality. So there's a whole. So sometimes, like when someone is really in, praying for something very hard and it's very challenging. I don't think what I'm going to say right now is going to necessarily appease them and make them feel okay about their prayer not being answered, but I think it's something just to be aware of. I think that sometimes when we pray, God will say no, and that's just the reality of it. God is not a vending machine who's sending out, I pray for this, you get this. And as painful as that is, that we don't get what we want, I think that's the essence of a genuine relationship. Because when you think of like a spoiled child, where the parent gives everything they want to the child, or even in a romantic relationship, if one partner is giving everything to the other partner and not really having their space or their own voice or their own needs met, that's not really a relationship. It's a little bit controlling, abusive, maybe even in certain cases. But I don't want to go there, but I want to just say, like, I think in the terms of the relationship with God and God saying no, I think that if God always answered us how we wanted, always said yes, then in essence we would be worshiping ourselves, because I think that whatever it may be, that X is what I want and what I need, but God, if we're trusting and believing that He is all knowing, then we are believing and trusting that He knows better than me. So I might be praying for this, and we spoke about this a little bit in some previous classes about the Yehiratzon, about it should be your will, right? That God's will should be my will, and aligning that. So I might think or want these things, but I don't necessarily know if they're best for me or best for me right now, let's say, or best for me at all. So I think that there's that, again, like I'm saying, when someone's going through a hard situation and they're troubled and they're not getting the things they want, I don't think this is going to make them feel like, okay, great. But I think it's just something to be aware of in our relationship when we pray to God. And there's actually, I'll put it in the chat after, in 1994, there was a soldier in Israel named Nachshon Waxman, and he was captured by terrorists. And it was on a Thursday, I think, and on Friday, his parents, his family, pleaded to the nation, when you light your Shabbat candles, pray for my son that he should come, return and be safe. And the whole nation, I think people even lit an extra candle for him when they lit the Shabbat candles or something like that. Like it was a whole national stress, tragedy, whatever you want to call it. And everyone was thinking about the soldier, this Nachshon. And then what happened was they had an operation to go save him. They found where he was being held, and when they went to save him, he unfortunately was killed in the fight to try to save him. And a lot of people had a hard time with this. And at the funeral, his mother said, because people were saying we prayed and the whole nation prayed, and what happened? How did God not answer us? And she answered, and and I think in the eulogy or something, maybe on the news after, whatever it was, and she said, sometimes God says no. And we don't know why, and we don't necessarily understand it, but sometimes that's what happens. Um, and then I had heard and seen that story a while, and I just saw a different article, which I'll post later in the chat, where there's a little addendum to that article where they say that later in the Shiva, when they were sitting, one of the soldiers who was in the unit that went to save Nachshon, unsuccessfully, sadly, he told her, he said, no, those prayers saved us because there is no reason that any of us should be alive right now. And that soldier felt that the prayers saved the other people. So obviously we're not God. We don't know. We're limited. But again, this is not looking to make someone that's going through a hard time praying for something. I don't think that's going to be an answer for them. But I do think it is something just to in terms of any relationship, like I said before, about spoiling or bordering on abuse of always getting what you want versus not having healthy boundaries. And I think that's something that, especially in Tefillah, it could end up becoming avodah zarah, like a self-worship as opposed to a God worship. So I just thought that was important to put out there, because yes, thankfully, Hannah's Tefillah was answered, but that doesn't mean that every tefillah is going to be answered, and if your tefillah isn't answered, it doesn't mean it wasn't genuine or real or connected. It just means that we don't know. And there's this balance of our hishtadlu, our actions, and doing what we need to do, and everything in our power. But we are human and we are limited, so there is only so much we could do. So therefore, we have to sort of, I don't want to say give up, but like put it in God's hands at the end of the day. And if you yourself, feel confident that in whatever area you may be asking for, I'm doing everything I can. I am seeing all the right doctors, or whatever it may be, but the things aren't turning out the way I want. There is just a level of, this isn't in my hands, and I'm not God, and I don't know why, and as painful as it is. So I'm just gonna end with that for a little bit. That point, I just thought it was important to say after last week's class. Okay, so now I want to talk about Birchot HaShachar. And when I was planning this class, I was thinking, I said, I want to sort of do it. I want to sort of cover a lot of topics, but it's sort of like an introductory type class in the sense of it's a lot of topics, and each one really could delve into. But I want to sort of touch on a lot and come out with a sort of thematic idea of what's going on here. So what are the Birchot HaShachar? Birchot HaShachar literally mean the blessings of the dawn. So it's the section of the tefillah, the first thing we say every morning, right? The first tefillah that we say every morning. So why is this important? And I chose this for last also. I think it's an important thing to learn about and focus on, because the way you start your day sets the whole tone for your day, right? I mean, I don't know if that's only me, but I think most people could agree to that. If you start your day and you wake up and you get yourself together and you have an agenda and you push through, like your day is more productive, you feel better about yourself. And if you start your day where, maybe you woke up late and everything was not the way it needed to be, then your day's off, you have those days. So I think it's important to look at what the Hachamim, what the rabbis and the Hachamim were sort of telling us, this should be the tone of your day, okay? So I think that's a very important thing to first, just to frame your mind of that, of why am I, what's going on as I start my day and frame my day. So the first thing we do, and if you have a Siddur and want to open it, feel free. I'm just going to use it as sort of a guide for myself to make sure I'm going and, to sort of track myself, pace myself. You also could open it. You also could not listen to me. But what do we start with? And we start with this. Literally, we're supposed to be saying this the minute we open our eyes. We say, Modeh ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shechazat bi nishmati v'chamla v'hamunatecha. Right? We start with the Modeh ani. It's a thank you prayer, right? It's acknowledging God and thanking God first thing that I am starting the day. Okay. And by the way, I didn't see this, but actually, no, I'll say that after. Okay. Yeah, I'll say it's now. The Shulchan Aruch actually says, who codified the halacha, he says that the way he says it is one should wake up, I'll read his exact words, מתכבד כארי לעמוד בבוקר לעבודת בוראו, שיהיה הוא מעורר השחר. One should strengthen himself like a lion to get up in the morning to serve his creator, so that it is he who awakens the dawn. So there's this whole thing about when you should wake up, when you should start praying. And the Shulchan Aruch basically says you should be waking up right at the start of the day, start your day like a lion with strength. And what's the point? To worship your creator. Okay. Also, one shouldn't eat before they pray, showing that I need to acknowledge and talk about and discuss these things before I deal with my own matters. Okay, so when you say the Modani, you're basically thanking God. You're acknowledging and thanking God that He gave you life. Okay, that He's giving you life constantly, because there's an idea in the Chachamim, like the rabbis talk about, that sleep is like 1/60th of death. So there's this level that, like, when we're sleeping, we're on we're almost, on a very low level, obviously, but we're like dead. Meaning, what does that mean? We're unconscious, we're inactive, we're not moving, we're not living our life, we're just there. So that when God, when we wake up, it's like God's reinstilling life in us again. Now, what is that? When I say those words about first of all, when I'm thanking God, and when I'm conscious of those words, I'm acknowledging that my day is not mine, right? My life is not mine. First of all, God has given me the life, so therefore, my day and what I do and the actions are not mine necessarily, in the sense of they're bigger than me. I shouldn't just be thinking about my needs. Again, with the eating before you pray, I shouldn't be thinking about my needs. I should be thinking about, what am I going to do for God, for the Jewish people, for the world? Like, what am I going to do? Like, what am I here for, right? More of a purpose. It gives you a more of a target of your day, as opposed to just like, okay, what are we doing? And I think that, like, at least for me, I really could relate to this in the sense of now when, we went through the whole Corona lockdown, all these things, it's especially when you don't have, you're not leaving your house necessarily, you're not on an agenda so much. It's hard to really find that purpose and really find the direction. But I think that the Modani is sort of giving us that on whatever level we can, depending on, what's going on in our lives, and especially now with Corona and everything. So that's really what I think when we're starting the day, that's where our mindset should be. Also, by the way, I think, well, no, I'll say that for later. The next thing we do is we're going to wash our hands. We have the B'racha Netilat Yadayim. And this is not the Netilat Yadayim of eating bread, it's a different Netilat Yadayim. And there's different discussions of what the purpose is of this Netilat Yadayim, okay? So there's one idea of it takes away the Ruach Ra'ah, the bad spirits, because there was this belief, a Kabbalistic belief. I don't necessarily so much connect to this, but it's there, so I'll say it. There's this Kabbalistic belief that because of the sleeping 1/60th death, because of the night having these bad omens, so to speak, that when you wake up, you want to rid yourself of that. So you're washing your hands. Like I said, I don't necessarily connect to that so much, but it is an idea that's out there. Another idea is that, which is like a physical, very possible idea, is that you touched something uncovered or dirty in your body when you were sleeping. So you're more to rid yourself of that. And the third, which I think is, to me, I connect to most, is the Kohanim, the priests who would walk into the Mikdash, into the temple, and they would wash their hands with the kiyor. There was a special basin of water, and they would wash. It wasn't a washing of cleanliness, it was a washing of readiness, of getting yourself ready to do the worship and in the Mikdash. So this washing hands was getting you ready for that, physically and mentally, doing something to make you ready for that. So I think that, to me, I relate to that in terms of washing hands, getting ready to start the day. I'm doing this, it's not necessarily a hygienic thing, but it's more of a consciousness thing of moving, starting my day. Let me just say, there's a lot of brachot here. I'm going to go through some of them in more detail, some of them pretty quickly, and then sort of wrap it all up thematically, so just to know which direction I'm going in. Again, also, by the way, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. Put them in the chat, and I'll look at them in a little bit, just to, Okay, so the next bracha is Asher Yatzar, and I'm not going to read through the whole bracha, but I'll just summarize it basically. In this bracha, we are thanking acknowledging and thanking. I think it's not only thinking, it's also acknowledging the fact that God created this body that we have, this physical body, and it works miraculously. And it talks about we have all these openings and closings, and the things that need to be opened are open, the things that need to be closed are closed. If those change, it would be a problem. And yeah, so that's we're basically thanking God. And it says, you are the healer, you are the creator and healer of everybody, okay? And in wondrous things. And I think we do say this bracha every time every time after we go to the bathroom, because we're acknowledging that God created this digestive system that I eat and it works, and the food, I take the energy from the food and then I go to the bathroom. And it's a miraculous system when you think about it, how it all works. And if anyone knows anyone or has any digestive issues, you know how if something doesn't work, it's a big, big problem. And unfortunately, that is many, there's diseases like that. Or not only the digestive system, but any part of your body that's not working correctly, it's a big problem. So even though we day to day we'll say this, during our day we'll say this bracha after we go to the bathroom, it's really referring to all the wondrousness of the body. And actually, I just want to share something that I watched and I thought, and I think like you really realize this if God forbid. And I'm not even talking about like a big sickness. I'm talking about even something inconvenient, like something breaks or something sprained or something hurts or whatever. You see how fragile physically we are, that so little could affect us so much. Like if something's hurting you or strained, it just affects you all day. And I don't know if anyone's watched this, but I highly recommend it. I thought it was very interesting. There's a documentary on Netflix called Lenox Hill, about the Lenox Hill Hospital in New York, Manhattan, and it follows a bunch of doctors through different through their days with different patients. And I thought it was an amazing show. I just thought it was very interesting to see that. It was very real. Like I've seen a lot of doctor drama shows, and this was a real, hospital without all the extra added drama, and it was still very, very interesting how it all works. But one thing that I was drawn to was the neurosurgery department. And there was a doctor there in one case. Well, there was a doctor there. I forgot if he was the head of the department or one of the heads or whatever, but one of the doctors in the neurology department, he was doing a clinical trial study on brain tumors, how to reduce brain tumors. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but basically he had one patient and they were just not understanding how he presented one way in the scans, but then his actions were another way. And then they thought it was going down, but then it went up. And it was everything that they could have predicted. It was not. It was just the whole thing just didn't make sense. And this is someone who's like at the top of his field, one of the top people doing research, breakthrough research, knows all these things, been doing surgeries, understands more than most, people in the world about these things. And there was one scene that really stuck with me where he was looking at the scan and he was just like, there's just so much we don't get about this disease and about the brain. And I think that even now with modern medicine and with all the advancements that we have, there's still so much, not only about the brain, but about so many diseases that we just don't know. So yeah, it's just a wonder if you really think about what your body can and does do every day, that we don't even realize the millions of processes that are going on for us to live a normal, functioning, healthy life. So that's one of the first things that we're thanking and acknowledging God for. Then we go into the Elohai Neshamat prayer, where we're thanking and acknowledging God about our soul, our neshama, our spiritualness. Now, I think this is a very interesting bracha because we're doing a lot of things here. Where, first of all, we're thanking God for it. We're saying that it is pure. We're calling it tehora, which I'm going to come back to in a second. Where God created it, God gave it to me, God instilled it in me. You are making sure it stays in me, right? You're protecting it and preserving it in me, because I know you technically, like we could, life is very transient. We don't know what we don't know. Our next breath is not necessarily a given. So that we're thanking God that He's constantly instilling that in us. You will take it from us, right? Everyone will ultimately pass, and you will give it back to us in Tchiat HaMetim, right, with the resurrection of the dead. And I'm going to thank you and serve you as long as this soul is in my body. So what I find very interesting about this is a few things. Number one, it is in the singular. And a lot, we were talking about in the Amidah prayer, especially, and also with Hana, this importance of the collective and the individual. And I think here it's interesting that it's all about the individual. And I think that that's a very telling thing, because this bracha specifically is about my spirit, my potential, my own abilities, my uniqueness, right? So this bracha, I think, is gearing us towards the uniqueness and the capabilities that are each person has in this world that God gave us. So that's why I think it's an individual bracha. Also to note, it does not start with the words Baruch Atah Hashem, which most brachot start with, and some say that that's because it's when you're praising God, you don't necessarily need to start with that because you're already conscious of Him, you're already just talking to Him. It's a praise. And others say that it's connected to the Asher Yatzar prayer before it. So we have the second opinion sort of saying we have this physical prayer about our bodies, and then we have the spiritual prayer about our soul. So and our uniqueness and pureness. Also, the pureness, I think, is an important thing to know, is that Judaism has the idea that the soul is pure, unlike the Christian idea of the original sin and always needing to fix yourself. So Judaism does not hold by that, obviously. I mean, you see it here and in many other ways as well. Okay, then we have a list, basically, of, well, not a list, but a succession of a bunch of short blessings that seemingly are thanking God for normal, mundane processes. I'm just gonna go through them quickly. I'm not gonna read them, I'm just gonna say what they are. We have one that's thanking God for, it's called Noten LaSichvi Bina, there's a machloket of what sichvi is. Is it a rooster that God gives the ability for the rooster to know night and day and wake people up? This is talking in ancient society. Or is sichvi my heart, which is other sources of the sichvi is the heart, and my heart is able to discern. It's a bracha being able to discern things, okay? It's to be able to distinguish and discern between things. We have bracha pokeach ivrim, opening our eyes, matir asurim, releasing those that are bound, zokef profim, those that are bent over, they stand up, bish arumim, giving us clothes, noten le'ev koach, giving strength, arokaha hamayim, that you created stable ground on the water, because in Bereshit it talks about the water, and God created Akia ben Mayim Lamayim. He made stable earth that we could walk on, and it wasn't just water. That you give me the ability to walk, that you have my footsteps. Shasali korsot ki, that you gave me all that I need. And a lot of the Hachamim talk about that being in regards to shoes. And I'm gonna go into this one in a second, which is interesting. It talks about specifically leather shoes, and we don't. Those that say we don't say this on Shabbat Av, on the 9th of Av when we fast, and we don't wear the leather shoes. And the reason interesting is because leather is showing that we could domesticate animals, and we're top of the food chain, so to speak, right? Because we could domesticate an animal, kill it, eat it, use its leather for shoes, clothes, whatever. And it sort of gives us a little arrogance that I'm on top of the food chain. So when we're saying this bracha, we're acknowledging that, yes, we're on top, but you're on top of us. So we're acknowledging that for ourselves. Also, you're saying you give me all my needs. It's saying li, me, in the singular, and not as a collective, because there's this balance of, for me, I should always think that God has given me what I need. I should always be happy with what I have, right? And there's the in Pirkei Avot, Ezehu Sameach HaSameach B'Chalko, right? Who's happy with his lot, and also Ezehu Ashir HaSameach, right? Who's rich is what he has. So, but for the collective, you should never think that anyone else has enough, because you should always be trying to do help and do better for the other people. So yeah, that's that. And then we have two specific brachot about Israel, about the nation of Israel, not the land, the nation, Am Yisrael. You give Israel strength, and this talks about, they say, when you put on a belt. And Otei Saba Tifara talks about the crown of Israel. That meaning head covering, kippah, and that for when you worship, when men are, worshiping, praying, and learning. So I'm going to stop here because I think this for a minute. And what are these brachas showing? What are these brachot showing? What are these blessings are really like? What are we really thanking him for? For our eyesight, for our ability to stand up, to walk, for solid ground. So I think these things are seemingly mundane things, and we're trying to transcend the mundane and elevate the mundane and connect it to God. We're also showing gratitude to God for setting up the laws of nature, to setting up this ability that, in a way, yes, it is a given for most people to open their eyes and see. It's an anomaly, or it's a fear if someone wakes up and they can't see, or if someone's blind, that's an outlier, right? So, or things like that, if someone can't walk and those things. It's not the norm. The norm is that people are doing all these things. So we're thanking God for that, setting up that world. Also, we talk about the uniqueness of Israel, that we have this unique connection, that God gives us this strength and gives us this crown and glory. Interestingly enough, there's a discussion of how you should say Zrachot. What do I mean? That should you say them all at once, or should you say them as you're doing each thing? Meaning, as I open my eyes, should I say Bokeh Chivrim, that I could see? As I sit up, should I say Zokeh Chivrim, right? And put on my shoes and all these things, like should I say it as I do it? And most people now, in shuls are hold by that you say it all at once. But I do think there is a beauty in, I don't do this, it's not really the custom, but there is a beauty, I think, in saying each bracha as you do it, because then you're really creating your whole morning routine, your whole morning regimen is really infused with you thinking about God, which I think is a beautiful thing, if we could do that. Most of us, myself included, you wake up, you're running, you're getting dressed, you're getting your day started, getting to work, and kids to school, whatever it may be. And so I'm not necessarily thinking about God in those moments. So it could be, making us more conscious of that. The next thing is the lo brachot, the no. So most brachot are written in a positive, like I have this or thank you for this. These three brachot are written in negative, that I am not this, that I don't have this, okay? I'm going to say right here, I'm going to talk about these for a couple minutes, but I as much as I looked and asked, and I haven't found interpretations to these brachot that really sit well with me. I'm going to say what I've heard that sits okay with me, but if anyone else has a better interpretation or read something better, please share it. I'm still looking. So it's three brachot that say, Baruch Hashem shelo asani goy, that I'm not a Gentile, or and then shelo asani eved, that I'm not a slave. Women say shivcha, the female version. And shelo asani isha, that I am not a woman. Men say I am not a woman, and women say shasani kirsono, that you made me according to your will. Yeah. So basically, what I've heard about these and read about these is that all these groups have less mitzvah, less commandments to connect to God. So their inability, they're it's not that necessarily they're bad. It's just that they are not able to connect to God. Like someone who's a goy, who's not a Jew, has a 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach, 7 Noachite laws, and someone who's a Jew has the 613 mitzvot. So we have more opportunities to connect to God. Same thing with a slave. A slave can't do or isn't unable to do certain mitzvot, right? They're subjugated. They can't do certain mitzvot. And a free person can do some mitzvot. And with the men have more mitzvot than women because of mitzvot that women can't do time-bound mitzvot, or aren't commanded to do. They can, but they're not commanded to do time-bound mitzvot. And the woman does say shasani kirsona, and so there's this whole thing that the women doesn't need as many mitzvot to get connected to God as close. It's a positive mitzvah, blessing. She is already on a higher spiritual level, they say. Again, I'm not really satisfied with this. I think at the end of the day, it comes to the fact of this is a society they were written in. And even now, it's easier to be a man. It's a man's world. It is what it is. And I just think that that's where it comes from society, from context. Again, if anyone has a better interpretation, please pass it on. Okay, then we have this bracha and then 2 yehiratzons. So we have the bracha of hamavir chavle shena menenu, that you wipe the sleep from my eyes. And then you have, which I just wipe my eye because, you say. Now, and then we have the yehiratzon, which is talking about making the I call it like a sur mira setov, like to take us away from all the things that are gonna cause us to be far from Torah and make us close to the things that are gonna make us connected to Torah, right? And be able to get the kindness of God because we're connecting to His Torah and not being far from it. And then the second yehiratzon talks about getting away from bad influences, right? It talks about please take away a bad neighbor, a bad friend, any mishaps that could happen to me, any bad language, right? So taking away the bad. Now, for those that were there for the Amidah class, we spoke about how at the end of the Amidah there's a hiratzon that there was different hiratzons in the Gemara. That different rabbis would say at the end is like a last hall of like, I want to thank God for all these things or ask God for all these things. And some say that these were also taken from some things like that. It's basically sort of saying, I want you to give me the optimal day to connect to you, to not get me in anything negative and help me stay in something positive. And the bracha of hamavir, wiping the sleep from your eyes, I read something nice that it's very similar to the one of giving someone strength, right? It's sort of same idea, giving someone strength, wiping the sleep from your eyes, getting up. But I actually read something that was nice, and I think it was Rav Schwab's book. Yeah, I think it was Rav Schwab's book. I read it, if I'm not mistaken. That it's specific. It's connected to the specific bracha of Am Yisrael because it has to do with the fact that God is giving us the strength as a nation to go through all the dark times of history and still keep our eyes open and our head held high through all the traumas and tribulations as a Jewish nation that we face as a nation. So now we get to a different section, which is part of the Birkot HaShachar, the morning prayers, but it's its own subsection called Birkot HaTorah, where we're blessing on the Torah. Now, it's very interesting because you don't usually make a blessing on a thought, but like we don't, it's more on actions that we do. But the Birkot HaTorah have to do with not necessarily the thought process of Torah, but the learning and transmission of Torah. So there's 3 brachot here. We talk about al divrei Torah, right? The words of Torah, meaning the learning that I plan and hope to do today. I'm thanking you and blessing you for that. And then I am asking you, the second bracha is va'arevna, it should be sweetened and mixed in my mouth and the mouths of my children. It should be a positive experience that I could pass on. And we all know, we're all able to learn your Torah and connect to your Torah for the sake of it. And we thank you, God, for that God taught the Torah to Israel. And I love this bracha because it's not only saying the learning, but you want it to be something positive, a positive experience, a connective experience with your children, right? And the generations to follow. So we see a lot, especially in today's day and age, how it is very hard necessarily to transmit a Torah life necessarily to your children. And we're sort of asking and hoping that God will help us do that in this bracha. And also, it's connected to a pasuk. The idea is connected to a pasuk that one of my favorite pasukim in Yoshua, where before Yoshua goes into the land, God's talking to him, and he says, Yoshua says to Yoshua, Lo yamush sefer haTorah hazeh mipicha, v'higata bo yomam v'layla, lamad tishmo la'asot kechol ha'katuv bo, ki az tatzliach et derachich va'az teskil. So don't let this book leave your lips. Learn it day and night. This book will protect you and guide you so that you should be successful. So, so the Torah is our guide. It's a framework. When we, I'll talk about that in a second when I do the next bracha, and then I'll summarize the whole Birkot Torah. So the next bracha is Asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu torata baruch atah Hashem noten haTorah. And we're thanking God specifically that He gave us the Torah over all the other nations. So why is this something that's so important that we have 3 blessings on the Torah, on this Torah that God gave us? And I think that, again, this could be a whole other discussion. We could talk about it with Parashat Yitro, with Sefer Devarim, but I'm going to talk about it just peripherally a little bit. The Torah, what is it? It's our framework, right? It's God saying, this is how I want you to relate to me. This is what I like. This is, so to speak, the present I want for my birthday. This is what, because as humans, we don't know what God wants. He's this different entity to us, Even think about with your relationship with people. You might think that a friend or a partner wants X because you want it and you would like that, but maybe they want something that's totally opposite. So it's in relationships, it's that learning curve. So the same way here is we don't necessarily have that ability to have that learning curve with God because he's God. So he gave us the Torah to give us the guidelines of how we should and want to relate, how we want and should relate to him. So it's a big deal that's our whole foundation of the relationship. So we're thanking him and connecting to that. And then after, there's a whole idea of saying a bracha and then doing the action, so that we should do the action of learning Torah. We then say a little section of Birkat Kohanim, which is from Sefer Bamidbar, where the Kohanim priests people. And I think it's such a fitting piece of Torah that they picked, that the Hamim picked to put here. By the way, the Ashkenazim also say, I forgot which Mishnah it is, but it's the Mishnah. It's also a part of Mishnah because they put Torah Shebechtav and Be'al Peh. The Saradim just do Bechtav. And I think it's such a fitting piece because the Kohanim were the teachers that helped people learn and connect the Torah. That was their goal, really, the Kohanim and Levi'im. Yes, they worked in the Mikdash, but the way it worked, just a 30-second tangent on that, is they would do shifts in the Mikdash. They weren't, all the Kohanim and Levi'im weren't there all year. They had shifts. And those that weren't in the Mikdash, they were essentially the teachers that were out. They weren't allowed to own land. They didn't have land that they owned, a plot of land, the Nachala, when they lived amongst the people teaching them. So I think it's just very fitting that we're having this bracha about learning Torah, and then we talk about those that were teaching us, blessing us. So it's just a nice fitting thing. Okay, so that was a lot of things. I'm sorry if that seemed a little disjointed, but I want to just sort of sum it all up now. What are we doing here? We're starting the day with gratitude. We're connecting our goals and our purposes and acknowledging and valuing my uniqueness and where I want to go. We're seeing the uniqueness of my own individual self in the world and my nation of Israel in the world and my connection with God, right? We're acknowledging all these things. We're elevating the mundane to service of God and to consciousness that it's not mundane, even though it seems mundane, like our bodily systems and all that. And we're seeing God in the day-to-day in the non-miraculous, so to speak, that really is miraculous. And the fact that God created these laws of nature that are given to us is a beautiful thing that we need to be thankful of, because they can, like if we have natural disasters or sicknesses, all these things, you see how quickly the life can shift. And then we end with the importance of the Torah as the framework and the context of my life. So that was the Birkot HaShachar. I want to just talk about in general, just to sum up the whole four series in a little bit, is I hope for those that heard 1, 2, 3, 4, thank you for coming. And I hope you enjoyed. And I hope the takeaway that I really felt that my goal here was to see Tefila as a gift and not a burden, which I think a lot of people do, myself included sometimes, like finding the time and being able to do it. But seeing that it really is a gift and it's for me and it's my time to connect to God, to self-evaluate. And I think that, now we see in the secular world even, all these ideas that I just spoke about, practicing gratitude, having clear set goals, finding my uniqueness. These are all things that are big hot topics in the world now, in the self-help world and the, and all that. So Judaism has been standing by that for years, and we guide it to God, obviously. Other people guide it to other things, but, it's still an important framework to connect and live our life. And we have this ability to sit and talk to God and evaluate ourselves and make that connection every day. And it's for our benefit. And I hope that, myself included, we all could, take advantage of that a little better. So thank you for coming. And just a little PSA. I will be hopefully, if you follow the SCA emails, you'll hopefully be getting information. I'm going to be giving a class not next week, but the week after. I think it's July 7th. It's going to be Tuesdays, but we're moving it to 10 a.m. New York time, 5 p.m. Israel time. And it's going to be God and his land, the connection between the Jews and Israel. It's going to be about different topics in the Torah that connect to Israel and different themes like that. So hopefully you could join. If anyone here, I'll put my, hold on, I'll put my, wait, why is this not here? I'll put my email if anyone is not, anyone wants to email me. I see I have a question. Do you mean sharing where one can find the source of these brachot? These brachot. I don't mind. It is in, I'm forgetting exactly what Gemara is. It's in Gemara where they talk about all this built up. I don't remember right now exactly what Masechet it is. If you email me, whoever asked that question, it just says iPhone, so I don't know who emailed me, who messaged me. If you email me, I will look up the exact Masechet for you, the exact section for you, and send you the source. Thank you, and have a nice day, and hope to see you at the next series.